in my hand in a vacuum chamber. 3, 2, 1. Oh, wow. Okay, it's really sucking.
Okay, so yeah, he's gonna go with physical reality first and normally, not what scientism tells him later when he looks into it, but physical observable reality tells him that something in that vacuum chamber is sucking on his skin, and it is. Okay, now these people, scientism, they don't want you to know the truth about a vacuum because they say the entire Earth, which is covered in gas, oxygen, liquid, Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This whole system is within and surrounded by an infinite and expanding vacuum universe, billions of light years across. Okay, so they want you to believe, and this is ridiculous, they want you to believe that the pressure inside his arm is pushing outwards. And that's what he is mistakenly calling a sucking force. When in reality, that vacuum pump right there is sucking the air. It's sucking the air, it's sucking on the inner walls of that chamber and on his skin. It's pulling on everything. That's what's going on. Okay? That vacuum pump right there is creating a sucking pull. It's pulling on everything in that jar. It's pulling on the inside walls. If the walls of that vacuum chamber, tank, can, whatever it is, were weaker, it would implode. It would come like that, just like I showed you with the plastic soda bottle. But the walls on this container are stronger than the plastic bottle. Okay, so the vacuum pump is creating a sucking, pulling force. And the air and his skin is being pulled on, as well as the walls of the chamber. But they're strong, so they won't collapse or implode. If that was a plastic soda bottle, it would immediately implode, okay, because of the sucking force. They don't want you to know that, because they want you to believe that the whole Earth, covered in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, us, trees, dirt, matter, that this whole system is surrounded by, stuck in the middle, or within an infinite and expanding vacant space, vacuum universe, billions of light years across, and it's all okay. Because guess what? We taught you that vacuums are nothing, therefore they can't do anything. So if there's no pressure by the vacuum, no gas and oxygen can get pushed into it. And that is ridiculous. It is nonsense. Now, in the room where I'm doing this video now, it's full of oxygen, but there's no pressure. Pressure is a push or to press against, okay? The oxygen in this room, that gas of oxygen, is traveling in every direction, okay? It's not just going in one direction down. Pressure, the way they teach it, this 14.7 psi is from above pushing down on us. And for 14.7 psi to be pushing down on us, it would have to be going in one direction, straight down and upon us. And that would be a pressure. That would be a pressure we could recognize. Okay? They say we don't recognize it because we ourselves are exerting, or we have a pushing outward pressure of 14.7 psi, which pushes out of us. My thumb is us, and my index finger is the 14.7 psi, and they're both canceling each other out. One's pushing up, one's pushing down, and canceling the other out so that we don't feel it. Okay, but that doesn't negate the fact that that pressure pushing down should affect other things. Now, when you ask, why doesn't a fly get crushed? And they'll tell you, well, the fly has evolved to withstand the 14.7 psi. Why aren't flowers crushed? Well, they have evolved to withstand the 14.7 psi. But the fly that evolved to withstand an immense pressure of 14.7 psi, that's almost 15 pounds per every little square inch. And even for just 1 mile above your head, that would be hundreds of pounds pushing down. So the fly has evolved to withstand that immense 14.7 psi, but you can kill it with a fly swatter. With the force you generate with a fly swatter is nothing compared to a couple miles over your head of 14.7 psi pushing down on you. Okay, so that is illogical. That don't make no sense. That contradicts what they tell us. They've gotten away with this because no one for the longest time has ever questioned what they tell us. Now this thing called the Flat Earth topic has finally brought out some scrutiny against the heliocentric model. And it is a model. We do not live on a model. It is a model. Okay? When this suction pump, vacuum pump, sucks the air out of that container, it is pulling the air out. It is pulling on the inner walls of that chamber, and it is pulling on every square inch of his hand. That's why it's swelling. That's why his body and his mind, his body communicates to his mind that there is a sucking force pulling on your arm. Okay, so in a vacuum, there is something. There's a resistance. There's lots of videos where guys put their hands in vacuums and try to pick up little screws, and there's a resistance in there to open and close their hand. There's something in there. I don't know what you want to call it. I'd never call it the ether or space-time. I don't know. It's a sucking force that a vacuum creates, and it can be demonstrated. Right now, that vacuum pump is sucking the air out of that chamber. It's a pulling force to pull the air out, and that sucking force meets his arm and pulls on his arm. That's why he's going to say, involuntary, oh, it's really sucking. And then he's going to say his arm is swelling. Swelling is to expand outwards, you see. If you get hit hard, it will expand, it will swell. That's different from what I'm talking about because it swells from the inside and out. But in this case, that vacuum pump is creating a pulling force that's pulling on his arm. Did you hear that? It's really sucking because it is. It's suction. That vacuum pump is sucking the air and anything else in the area out. It's creating a sucking force. I don't know why that's so hard to understand. But then the answer appears immediately because you don't want to understand it because it debunks outer space. There's no way the Earth could be surrounded by an infinite and expanding vacuum universe area of vacant space billions of light years across. Okay, that would create massive, tremendous, horrendous suction. Okay, and all the gas, oxygen, liquid matter on the Earth would be forced into the vacant space just like the definition of suction tells us. They tell you the truth, but they do not expect it to click. They do not expect you to equate it with the vacuum universe that they say is surrounding the entirety of the Earth. Now, right here, again, we're on Google, the dictionary, the word is suction, and the definition is underneath it. Suction, the production, to produce a vacuum. How? By the removal of air, in order to force fluid into a vacant space, fluid or matter. Now, if outer space was an infinite and expanding vacuum universe, vacant space, billions of light years across, all the fluid and matter on the earth, the gallstones, whatever, would be forced into a vacant space. Okay? It's right there. They're telling on themselves, but they've been getting away with this because nobody questions the model. Nobody is willing to equate suction with the vacuum of outer space. Because it's an awful thing. It's an awful realization to have invested your entire life, student loan debt, and a lot of trust in people who aren't being honest with you. That's the problem. Suction. The production to produce a vacuum. How? By removing air. To what? Force fluid into a vacant space. Fluid or matter? Fluid and the gallstones are matter. Okay, physicians use a tube to suction out the gallstones. Okay, you produce suction when you have a vacuum. The production to produce a vacuum. How? By the removal of air. To do what? In order to force fluid or matter into a vacant space or procure adhesion. A suction cup procures adhesion because when you place the suction cup, let's say against a glass window, you push it in and that pushes out the air that's in the suction cup, and that creates a mini vacuum within the suction cup. Therefore, the vacuum, by removal of air, procure adhesion. What's so dishonest about what they're saying? I'm not saying it, they are. Suction, the production of a vacuum. How? By the removal of air. In order to force fluid or matter into a vacant space. That's how they suck the gallstones out. With a vacuum tube. To suction out the gallstones. Outside pressure isn't pushing the gallstones into the vacuum tube. The vacuum tube is sucking. Do you think it's any coincidence why they name the household appliance that sucks debris off your floor a vacuum? It's just ridiculous. You people don't want to face reality. Okay, fine. Don't watch the video or watch the video, thumb it down. But don't come in the comment section talking about I'm dishonest. I just showed you. The guy exclaims, "It's sucking!" My hand swelled. I showed you with a plastic soda bottle. I sucked the air out. The walls imploded or collapsed. They were pulled in. By me sucking the air out, I created a sucking force that pulled the walls of the soda bottle together and in on themselves. If outside pressure were doing that, it would have pushed the label and the little paper pieces I affixed to the outside of the bottle. It would have pushed them down too. Dynamic pressure is made up. They can make up anything because for the longest time, all you people do is just instantly believe, memorize, and regurgitate what they tell you. And that's how all this stuff got on the table. No scrutiny, no questions, just instantly believe. Your effort is to instantly believe and then memorize and try like heck to remember it for a test and get graded. You're not being graded for being smart or intelligent. The grading is just how good is your memory to remember the nonsense they tell you. It's right here. Suction. On Google, search engine, dictionary, definition, Oxford, what language, suction, the production to produce a vacuum. And they say partial because they claim, well, we can't get all the molecules of air out, so I'm not going with that. I'm just going with the production of a vacuum by the removal of air in order to force fluid into a vacant space. Suction, to suck or procure adhesion. Now I got the videos of the suction cup on a scale that weighs 10 grams. When I create the vacuum in the suction cup, it still weighs 10 grams. There's nothing going on outside the suction cup. Nothing has changed. I just created a vacuum within the suction cup and with little strands of toilet paper on it. that are never pushed down. Now, if you have any intellectual honesty, you have to acknowledge that. Dynamic pressure is made up. It is something they use to tailor to fit their narrative. And usually, 9 times out of 10, you'll just accept it, instantly believe, memorize, and regurgitate it. Well, that's over. A lot of people are waking up. They're not just going to instantly believe and write down and try to remember to regurgitate what some guy in a white lab coat with a German accent is telling them. That's over. Okay, we're stuck in a reality that can't be demonstrated. Most people don't know where they live. They think they're walking around on the outside surface of a giant spinning ball, that it itself is whizzing through an infinite and expanding vacuum universe, billions of light years across. And when I say billions of light years, I mean that's beyond infinite. Do you understand? 1 light year is almost 6 trillion miles, just 1 light year. And they say this vacuum is billions, 90 plus billion light years wide or across. And I've done it before, I'll say it again to emphasize the enormity of a trillion anything. A trillion seconds would take over 30,000 years to go by. That I use to express the enormity, the vastness of a trillion anything. Now imagine a trillion miles. You know how far that is? You could never see a trillion miles. If you have an IQ over 90, you can recognize that. And they tell us Polaris is up to 300 light years away. That's 300 times almost 6 trillion miles. That's over a quadrillion miles. That is asinine and illogical. The stars are not that far away. If they were, we'd never see them. You people need to wake up. Go Google suction, vacuum suck. They create and produce a sucking force. And that sucking force debunks outer space, because if outer space was what they say, all the gas and oxygen and liquid on the earth would fill that vacant space and we would not be here. Fact.